Cooking for toddlers can be the most frustrating thing ever. So in this video, I'm going to give you 4 of my daughter's favorite breakfast recipes, and hopefully your kiddo can enjoy them too. If you're new to my channel, I'm Carly. I'm a plant-based nutritionist, and I love sharing my passion for whole food, plant-based lifestyles with others who are considering this transformation or who may just require some additional support or inspiration along the way. What I do every week is I make a giant crock pot of oatmeal. This one's about a day old. Oh, yeah. So we eat this throughout the week, and I'll just make more as it goes. I use gluten-free whole grain oat groats, organic. I believe these are from Royal Lee Organics. You buy them in bulk, they're much cheaper. So I just put 2 cups in my crock pot with 8 cups of water. Put it on the lowest setting as I go to bed, and when I wake up in the morning, it's all ready. So I'm going to move the camera so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so typically I would put a little bit of oatmeal in her bowl. Maybe 1.25 cups. And then, I mean, depending on how old your child is, it's gonna vary. I batch cook beans every week as well, so they're always differing, so she gets a variety, but these are garbanzo beans that we made the other day. So this is to help her get some more protein, iron, and zinc into her meal because the oatmeal doesn't hold a whole lot of that. So maybe 1/4 cup of beans, really any kind, it doesn't matter, she's not particular. And then we're gonna heat this up, but while we're doing that, we are going to heat up the banana and the apple, as well as the cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. Okay, so I'm gonna heat up the pan and put maybe 1/4 cup of water in here, as well as about half the banana. And about half the apple, depending on how big the apple is. Now, you don't have to cook it, but she is pretty particular. She tends not to eat it if it's not. So you don't have to cook this long. It usually takes about 5 minutes or so. The apple takes a little bit longer than the banana sometimes. So especially for younger kids who haven't developed those chewing skills, or they just don't have enough teeth yet, it's really helpful to heat up your apples. It makes them a lot more mushy and easier to consume. So I'm going to add the spices. Again, I'm going to put some cloves. Some nutmeg. Sorry, I don't have any exact measurements, just enough to taste. So cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon. And I'm gonna let this cook while I put her oatmeal in the microwave. And I'm going to keep an eye on it though, because it looks like the water might need to be replenished soon. And this doesn't require any like sweeteners. She has been eating plant-based her whole life, so she is very attuned to these tastes. But also, I'm using a very ripe banana. So the riper the banana, the higher the sugar content. the higher the sugar concentration. Okay, so I just got the oatmeal out of the microwave and it's just warm enough to be able to mash up the garbanzo beans. You don't necessarily have to mash the beans. My daughter doesn't really care either way, but I just find it blends a lot more nicely if you mash them and mix it all together. Okay, now I'm gonna add her banana and apple. Okay, so I'm gonna top this with some organic 100% peanut butter. You can use any nut butter. I usually prefer to use an almond butter, but I'm all out at the moment. So this will help her get some of those healthy fats as well as some more protein. Then I'm gonna give her some walnuts on top. These are also packed with omega-3s as well as protein. And lastly, some organic cacao nibs for some more healthy fats and antioxidants. Okay, so this next one is gonna be a dark chocolate vinegar drizzled on top of a quinoa berry dish. I'm going to cook the quinoa ahead of time in my pressure cooker because it takes a little longer to cook. Maybe 20 minutes if you wait for the steam to come out. I'm just gonna go ahead and batch cook, so I'll use a full cup. So it's 1 part quinoa to 2 parts water. Put it on the rice setting. So right here, let's start. So while that cooks, I'm gonna get my berries out of the freezer so they can thaw. You always wanna use frozen berries as opposed to regular conventional ones, because they are actually less toxic by means of herbicides and pesticides if you can't afford organic. And it's Wisconsin and it's mid-January where I'm at, so these are not organic frozen berries. So this is just a mixture: strawberries, blackberries, and blueberries. So I'm just gonna let these thaw while the quinoa cooks. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so the pressure sensor is all the way down, so you know it's safe to open up the valve. And now we're going to open our quinoa. So I used tri-colored quinoa for this because I just like to get that variety, but technically the darker colored quinoa is going to be more nutritious by means of antioxidants and phytochemicals, but they're both very good for you. And the red tends to be a little more expensive. Here's our thawed frozen berries. I'm just gonna add some quinoa. And I'm gonna drizzle it with the dark chocolate vinegar. And finally, I'm going to add some hemp seeds. So you can also throw some nuts on top of this, or some of that date syrup. And there you go. So for the lentil crepes, all we're going to do is pour a cup of red lentils into 2 cups of water. Now we're gonna let these sit for about 3 hours at least. Okay, so as you can see, the lentils are completely soaked. They've absorbed all the water that they're going to. So they've been sitting about 4.5 hours now. And I'm just going to use the water that is in here to maintain the starches. I just made such a mess. That's okay. Well, the dogs can clean it up. They like their lentils too. So after you put the lentils in the blender, you're just gonna blend them up. And you don't need like a high power blender for this. I just have a Ninja at the moment. Okay, while I finish blending these, I'm gonna go turn on the pan and make sure it's a non-stick pan because I'm not gonna be using any oil for this. Okay, so you're gonna want it nice and frothy. And this one came out a little too liquidy. So I'm going to add some flaxseed. This will also provide more omega-3s for the meal, as well as protein. Flax is great at soaking up any unwanted moisture. I use it in all my baking. So now it's just gonna sit for a minute while it thickens. Okay, now it's getting a little closer to the consistency that we need. So I'm going to pour just a little bit into the pan. First one is always the worst. Okay, so you should start to see the little bubbles forming at the top and the edges browning. And you can heat it a bit. So I didn't quite wait long enough on that one, but it should still taste good. So they're just like pancakes. It's a little thicker than I needed it, but that's okay. I was gonna make crepes, but maybe we should just make pancakes. You just add as many as you need. I usually put in about a quarter of the bag, maybe a half a cup. You want to have the pot pretty hot, about medium heat. Yeah, these are much more like pancakes. That's okay. So while that's heating up, I'm going to put another pancake on. I'm going to add about a quarter cup of water to this pot. So I'm also going to add a tiny bit of date syrup. Just a little squeeze, you don't need much. This is pure dates, so there's no concentrated sugar or anything. You're still getting your nutrition with that. And then I'm going to use some of this coconut spice granola. And just throw in a little bit of that. Give it that extra crunch. And some cinnamon. So the water should evaporate eventually. So you want to continue stirring the cherries until the majority of the water is used up. This is about where you want it, liquid consistency wise. So we're just going to put this right on top of our pancakes. And there you go. Don't even need syrup. Last but not least, we are going to be making some pumpkin pie smoothies. All right, you're gonna need to gather some flaxseed, dates. I always use a 29 ounce or 1 pound pure pumpkin puree, as well as some cinnamon, cloves, ginger, nutmeg, and allspice. If you don't have all those, you can just use a regular pumpkin spice that you find at the grocery store. But those are usually the ingredients that you find it in. So you also need some organic unsweetened soy milk, as well as some frozen bananas. I'm gonna throw in, these are halved bananas, but about 2 whole bananas. I'd say like 2 medium-sized bananas. And you can always switch up these ingredients or add or take away as much as you need to, depending on your child's personal preferences and such. These bananas are always frozen while they're super ripe. You know, they look appetizing, don't they? But these are a constant item you'll find in my freezer because I always use these for like nice creams and such. So I'm gonna put these back in the freezer. And we're gonna pour about a cup of the soy milk. Make sure you shake it up. You can also add more of that if it's getting too thick. So we're gonna get all the pumpkin into the blender. And you don't necessarily need like a high power blender for this one either. This Ninja seems to be doing just fine. And you can make smaller portions too if you prefer. I just like to batch cook everything. You can put it in the freezer for later and then, you know, you don't have to bother when your child is screaming at you. Oh, what? Nobody else's kid does that? Great. All right. So there's the pumpkin. I'm just gonna blend this up quick before I add the other ingredients. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little bit more soy milk. As well as the date syrup. This again is a preference kind of thing. I just squeeze a little bit. It's pretty potent, so you don't need a lot. It's just refined dates. It's nothing unhealthy or anything. It's probably the healthiest of the sweeteners because it still holds things like magnesium, phosphorus, zinc, iron. All right, here's the cinnamon. I'd say at least a couple teaspoons, and then maybe a quarter teaspoon of the nutmeg. Maybe a full teaspoon of cloves, as well as the allspice, and then maybe a quarter teaspoon of the ginger. All right, so I'm gonna try to blend this up. I'm also gonna add a couple tablespoons of raw unsalted cashew butter to make sure my baby gets those healthy fats. I also typically add flax seeds, but this is already pretty thick, so I'm not gonna add them this time. But you feel free. Flax seeds are very, very good for your baby and yourself. This is also a great way to get greens into your kids' diet. So we're gonna add some spinach because it's the most neutral of the greens. My toddler has not had any problems with this. I'm using frozen spinach, but you can feel free to use fresh if you'd like. So I'm just gonna blend this up and it'll be all done. Make sure you taste it and add anything that might be lacking, like a little more sweetener or maybe some milk or cinnamon. All right, here is the final product. This one came out super thick, so I typically feed my baby this with a spoon. Sometimes they come out a lot thinner and your baby might be able to use a straw, but so I will store all this excess in the freezer and just thaw them out the day before I intend to feed it to her. And there you go. Doesn't look as appetizing as it tastes. Okay guys, I hope this was as much fun for you as it was for me. I will leave all the recipes down below in the description. And if you want to see more videos like this or need some more inspiration for ideas for meal planning for you or your toddler, just subscribe so you can be able to watch all my upcoming videos. And make sure to give this a thumbs up if you liked it. I will see you next time.